All right, everybody, let's get today's program started. We've got an exciting one for you, so let's get into it. Welcome to the Lunchtime Discovery Series. I'm your host, Chris Smith. I work here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. It's good to be with you for another edition of this fantastic program. Now, throughout March, we will be recognizing Women's History Month. This series, the Lunchtime Discovery Series, is a partnership between the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences and DEQ's Office of Environmental Education and Public Affairs. And the March talks are also sponsored by DEQ's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And today, we are fortunate to have DEQ Secretary Elizabeth Biser here with us today to moderate a discussion with 5 women working in STEM fields in state government. Secretary Biser is the first woman confirmed to lead the Department of Environmental Quality. She is a North Carolina native with a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Public Administration from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She previously served as the Director of Legislative and Intergovernmental Affairs for the agency, and after a decade of working on environmental issues in the private and nonprofit sectors, she returned to public service to lead the department. Secretary Biser is a strong advocate for environmental education and for education's critical role in the protection of our air, land, and water, and for our clean energy future. So it is fitting that she drives this conversation today, and I am proud to welcome Secretary Elizabeth Biser to the Lunchtime Discovery Series. Welcome, Secretary.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. I'm so glad to be here today. This is such an important discussion. According to the National Science Foundation, the number of women working in STEM fields has gradually increased since 2011, but men still make up the greater share of the STEM workforce. We at DEQ, as well as the other state agencies, are working to increase the number of women and underrepresented minorities working in STEM. And so one way to accomplish that goal is to elevate the stories of women and minorities working in the state government STEM fields. So this allows students to have role models to look up to and to imagine themselves in future STEM careers. So very excited to have our panelists that are here today. They represent a very diverse set of careers in state government. So I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves. So Vicki, I will head to you first.
Hi, thank you, Secretary Biser. My name is Vicki Thayer, and I am a conservation biologist for North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. I'm the North Carolina Marine Mammal Stranding Coordinator, and I am also an adjunct for the North Carolina State University Veterinary School, and I teach marine mammal biology at NC State.
Vicki, we're so glad to have you with us today. Emma, I'll head to you next.
Hi folks, my name is Emma Blackford. I am head of Prairie Ridge Eco Station, which is the outdoor extension of the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. In my role, I manage our 45-acre site. We're kind of part nature preserve, part outdoor learning center. So my job spans everything from education to natural resource management and conservation and everything in between.
Wonderful, thank you, Emma. Christine?
Hey everyone, my name is Christine Whitmire and I'm the Organics Recycling Specialist for DEQ, and I'm out of the Recycling and Materials Management section. And it's also known as RAMS, and we are in the non-regulatory division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service, and we help promote a circular economy by providing technical assistance to recycling businesses and local governments, grant opportunities that expand recycling infrastructure. We offer a variety of outreach programs. And one in particular that I want to highlight is Use the Food NC. It's our food waste reduction campaign that was launched in 2022.
Great, thank you, Christine. We're very excited about our food waste reduction initiative. And Dawn, we'll head to you next.
Hi, I'm Dawn Reddix. I am the Regional Supervisor for the Division of Air Quality's Raleigh Regional Office, and our office handles compliance, ambient monitoring, and permitting for air quality for this region.
I'm glad to have you with us today. And then last but not least, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Smith. Really glad to be here. I am the head of the Astronomy and Astrophysics Research Lab here at the museum and curator of meteorites. And I'm also a joint appointment. So I'm at Appalachian State University as well, where I teach astrobiology and star formation. And I study forming stars throughout the galaxy. So that's what I do. I'm excited to talk to everyone.
Rachel, glad you're here, and that sounds fascinating. So I may start with you.
Okay.
So the first question we're going to ask our panelists is, you all have such, again, varied careers in STEM, all fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about the path that led you to your career?
Yeah, so I kind of have a roundabout way of getting to where I am. I was always interested in science and math growing up. I'm from New York, and my dad was actually an astronomer, so I had an interest in the space and the sky and everything. But I loved animals too, so I went the route of biology and veterinary medicine, and I got a vet degree. It feels like a very long time ago. But then I found my way to museum work. I've always loved museums, growing up near New York City. And then I ended up going out to California. I worked in North Carolina at some museums, not here. I worked at some design firms in Boston, moved out to California, and ended up getting my PhD. And it was, I've always just loved science. And I've always had an interest in space, and I think I just needed to find my perfect place, kind of where I am. And I tell my students this, and I tell people who ask me about careers, that you never know necessarily when you're young exactly where the future will lead, and to follow your passion, do what you love, and do your best at everything. And so I found my way here to this museum, and I teach and I do outreach and research, and so it feels like the perfect place for me now. But I did kind of go roundabout way of getting there, I'd say.
That's a good point. So many people's paths are not linear. You try different things until you
Exactly.
find the right fit.
Right.
That's great.
Mhm.
Vicki, how about you? Tell us about your career path and how it led you where you are today.
Okay, thank you. I was raised by a single mom, and I visited the Florida Keys in 5th grade and swam with dolphins at Theater of the Sea in Islamorada. And that sort of got me hooked, and it sounds a little cheesy, but that's true. And then in high school, I wanted to go to veterinary school, but my high school counselor said women couldn't be veterinarians. And so that was interesting. But then I went to graduate school at Duke, and I was working for the maintenance program at Duke Marine Lab. And on my master's, and one of my professors stopped me while I was painting one of the labs and asked me if I wanted to go to Peru for a research cruise for him. And I went on research cruises for him for several years and saw a lot of marine mammals and met marine mammal biologists, and then ended up making sure that that was going to be my career.
I love that did not deter you with that early discouragement. And we'll come back to that theme here in a few minutes, because it does feel like a lot of, especially young girls, get discouraged from these fields. But thank you for sharing that. Emma, we'll come to you. Tell us about your path.
Yeah, so I think mine is similar in some ways to Rachel, in that I am also a non-linear path to where I ended up. I grew up bird watching. I started bird watching when I was very young and had this like deep connection to nature, kind of with bird watching as my lens to the natural world. And so kind of early on, I knew I wanted to do biology, just because that was the word that seemed the most similar to the bird watching and the nature that I was experiencing. So I went and got a degree in biology. I ended up going to grad school and for biology and doing field work, and loved it. But at the same time, had this sense of, how can we do all this science if we're not communicating it? Or how do we communicate it? How do I gain those skills to communicate it? So I went back to school again, and got a degree in education, and have been kind of doing various things in between all of those things, whether it was fieldwork or I worked in student affairs for a bit. So it sounds fairly linear. It wasn't. But trying to find a role where I can combine all those things and really work to engage community around our natural spaces.
That's great. I love you tried different things until you found the right fit as well. That's great. Dawn, let's go to you.
Non-linear path as well. So I got my degree in chemical engineering from Auburn. I left Auburn and went to work in the pulp and paper industry. And I did various roles at the pulp and paper industry. As a matter of fact, when I started, I started in information systems there. And the gentleman who hired me was also a chemical engineering graduate from Auburn. And he said, well, we don't have a role that chemies normally would go to in the paper mill, but I think engineers from Auburn can do anything. So we'll do you in information systems to start. And then about a year in, a role opened up. And I asked, I was like, I need to be closer to the process, need to get my feet wet, literally in the paper mill. But so I did process engineering at the paper mill. I did several different roles at that paper mill. Then I worked in another paper mill. After that, I took time off for family. I then taught math and chemistry for some years. And then I came here to Division of Air Quality in 2017. Did a rotation in the regional supervisor role in 2022 and now in this role. So
we're glad you found your way to us, Dawn. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Christine.
Yeah, thanks. My love for soil health, I would say, began in college while working part-time in a soil laboratory, also at Auburn University. And there I prepared samples for a variety of physical and chemical tests, and also assisted graduate students in collecting soil samples in the field. So that just was really fun to me, intriguing, and just being in that environment. And I was offered that opportunity directly by my professor, who saw that I was motivated and doing well in his soil science class. So definitely, you never know who's watching. And then after college, my first job was at an environmental nonprofit. And that led me to waste reduction and recycling. And it's also where I toured my first commercial composting facility. And after that, I was hooked. I saw that you could process a large amount of quantities of material and types of material, including like meat, bones, dairy, and the compostable plastics. So was very intrigued by how impactful commercial composting can be for our managing our waste. And then from there, I started working for a local government and managed their environmental programs, and am lucky to have started working at DEQ in 2022. So I continue to grow and learn about how to improve our local food system, and it's a really exciting time, as you know, Secretary Biser, that to see the EPA and USDA put a lot of resources behind our work.
Absolutely. This is a once in a generational time here, it feels like, for having all these investments throughout government, really. Vicki, I want to go back to something you said last. One of the things we mentioned briefly is like, as we're trying to encourage more and more, especially young girls, to pursue paths in STEM, they may not recognize their talent. They may be discouraged. You said that you were told, girls can't be veterinarians. We hear lots of stories about girls being told they don't have a specific aptitude in those areas. So how did you, we've already talked about how you became interested in your field, but did you have a natural affinity for science and math throughout your academic careers? Are there any stories around that you think might be helpful for any students who listen to this lunchtime series to hear about how perhaps you overcame somebody telling you couldn't do something, or how you pursued your love for math and science academically? So Vicki, we'll start with you.
Great questions. I don't think that I was particularly good in science and math. I think, like many young women, I excelled in math up until a certain age and then sort of drifted off, or maybe wasn't given as much encouragement as some of the boys in classes. But I was better at English and art. But I do think that young people could just find something to focus on that they feel they're passionate about, and then try not to let anything get in their way. Try to keep figuring out a way to do it. It may not be exactly what you want, but as we've heard from the other great women on this panel, the paths often aren't linear. I was interested in marine mammal anatomy, and I was working in California at the La Jolla NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center, and they were bringing back all these dolphins that were bycaught in the tuna fishery, the spotted and spinner dolphins, and doing necropsies in the parking lot. And I just really wanted to get involved in that. I was fascinated with their adaptations to the marine environment. And I think that along the way, there were discouraging thing sometimes, but I just kept trying to pursue my goal. And I encourage a lot of young people to do that. And luckily there were people who encouraged me along the way too.
That tenacity is important. Rachel, I'll go to you. How did you maintain your interest in math and science, and any discouragement or overcoming any of that you overcame along the way?
Yeah, so I was pretty good in science and math. I don't think that was a thing. I really enjoyed doing science and math, and I was encouraged by my parents, my mom, who's still around, my dad passed away, and my grandparents. But I think along the way through careers in general, through professors and you're going to find people who are encouraging, male and female, and you're going to find people who are not encouraging, male and female. And I think I've had very encouraging male supervisors, as well as female supervisors, and vice versa. So I think that I tell students this, and it's hard. I mean, looking back, we're successful, all of us, and we have careers, and to tell, for young people to remember that it's hard to have sometimes that drive all the time. And if you don't have support, how to keep that going when you don't either have financial support or emotional support or whatever kind of support is needed. And academic support. So I think that if they cross my path, I tell them that, just like we just heard, that if you want it, you can do it. I tell them, like, if you're really passionate about this, you can do it, and to remember that. And if there's somebody who's discouraging, even if it's hard if it's a family member too, because a lot of them have close family connections, is that there'll be people along the line who will encourage you to do it and to keep pushing forward. And certainly in grad school, I mean, all throughout careers, you have positive experiences and you have not so positive experiences, but throughout the years, you build up those positive experiences, hopefully, and that leads to a successful career. So I think it's just having that drive and being confident. And it's harder for young people, I think, sometimes to have that confidence if they don't have support, but I try to encourage them to know they can do it and to work hard and to keep pursuing their goals, and they'll eventually get there. And like we just heard, if they're follow your dream at the time, because you don't know, right? If your dream at the time is to be a designer, do that. If your dream at the time is to help animals, do that. And eventually I think you'll find the path, and to have that as the motivation to to do something you're passionate about and good at, I think that is important. So that's what I try to motivate them with.
That's great, Rachel. Listening to you, it also strikes me that finding good mentors is important, over the years as well. Finding folks who will encourage you. Thank you for sharing that. Emma, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, so piggybacking off Rachel a little bit again, one thing that sticks out to me as part of this conversation too is for young people to know you don't have to put yourself in a box. So for me, in terms of math and science, there were parts of math and science that I loved, that I was really good at. I loved algebra. I loved ecology, right? And then there were parts of math and science that I did not enjoy as much. Things like chemistry, things like physics, right? And so often we look at it in these broad boxes, right? Am I good at science? Am I bad at science? And you don't have to be good at all of it. You really, really don't. You can sit back and really focus on your own experiences and pick out the pieces that really resonate with you, right? So for me, it was ecology, 100%. And I pursued a path in biology, but I did not resonate with microbiology. I did not resonate with molecular biology. There are all of these aspects, even within biology, that were not my cup of tea, right? So for young people, kind of pursuing things like, take yourself out of the box. It's okay not to be good at everything. It's okay to really enjoy one thing and not quite understand something else. Just give yourself a break and really sit with what works for you, I think is an important thing for young people to know, that it's okay to do.
That's great advice, Emma. Certainly, I think we have a tendency to say, well, we're not good at science or not good at math, but there are parts of it. Very rare to find somebody who's good at every single part of science or math. So finding those areas that you really resonate with, that's great advice. Dawn, how about you?
Well, when Emma was speaking, it made me think about when the students would come down to chemistry class or they come down to science and they would say, I'm not a science person. So, don't expect much from me out of this class. I'm not a science person. And me and the other two ladies who were teaching science at that time were like, we don't have science people or like English people. We can all do all of it. And so I did have an affinity for math and science, and I loved chemistry. And so I did a lot of unsanctioned experiments at home when I was growing up, um, chastised for doing, mixing things together, but it was just always the inquisitive mind, trying to figure out things and how things worked. And so one of the things that I, told students, tell my children is like, the only person who can stop you from being successful is you. Like there may be people who give you discouraging words, but you really have to be the person who decides I'm not going to go any farther. So the big thing is like just keep moving forward. If you have an interest in something, then just keep at it. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Dawn. Christine, what about you?
Yeah, I especially loved my agriculture, biology, and chemistry classes. But there was one that surprised me the most, which was technology and civilization two. And it was where I was the only female in my class with a room full of engineers, and I was doing environmental science, so I already kind of felt a little inadequate. But I was really proud to say that by the end of that class, I was top of the class, and it was just felt so good and proud to be able to do that, and satisfying. And I would say my love for science and the environment definitely started at a young age. I think I can contribute wanting to protect the environment through free play that I had growing up, whether it be outside in my woods or when I would get the opportunity to go to the beach and play outside in the sand and just being able to explore. So I love that we can help get students started early and show them the wonders of science at a young age so that they want to protect it in the future.
That's great. The outdoor play is so important too. So, to go to our next question here, some studies show that women with STEM degrees, so even kind of having that early interest in going forward and getting that STEM degree, even women with STEM degrees are less likely than their male counterparts to work in a STEM occupation. So more likely to take that STEM degree and work in education or healthcare. So what advice would you give to women who are preparing for a STEM career? And we've touched on this a little bit so far, but maybe explore a little further about, finding that right professional fit, especially, given the number of folks on the call who said that I think most folks took a nonlinear path and tried a lot of different things before they got there. So what lessons would you distill from that process that you would advise young women in this field? So I'll start with Dawn on this one.
So for young women thinking about STEM fields, so my thing is in high school, take as many math and science courses as you possibly can. Take the AP courses if they're offered. I would tell students if there is a dual enrollment available, take those classes. But then not just take the classes, that your goal in those classes when you're preparing for any test, that you should be going for mastery. I would, so that if in fact you miss the mark, so if you were trying to get an A on the test and you missed the mark, then you get a B. That's still okay. But if you're trying to pass and you miss that mark, then you have failed. So, take the higher courses, prepare for mastery in high school. And then once you get to college, then find the professional organizations for the field that you're studying. Because in there, you're going to find resources, you'll find conferences, you'll find access to internships and co-ops, to be able to get experience, because you're going to need experience when you leave college. And then as far as finding a niche, the other piece of it is that for any career field you choose, there are so many different paths. Just as we were talking earlier, you majored in a thing, but you're doing something, it could be completely different, but that there are lots of different career paths in any given field. So don't get discouraged, but then to talk to somebody to see if you can't find somebody who's working in the field that you want to pursue, because they'll be able to give you some information that you might not otherwise have had. So that's it.
Great advice. Christine, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I would say my biggest piece of advice is just to get involved, volunteer, or even join a nonprofit board. Volunteering is also networking, and you never know, again, who's watching, and that could lead to an internship. Um, and I was fortunate enough to volunteer for a water quality nonprofit and did macroinvertebrate and chemical water quality sampling. And then that eventually led to an internship with stormwater management. So um, it was just so nice to be able to, one, give back, and then two, you'll meet some really great contacts from that. And then second, I would say, get involved with your professional organizations, like attend the conference, and then from the conference, you could join a subcommittee, and then from there, join the board. And so that really can improve your communication and team working skills. And again, it's just a great way to network.
Thank you, Christine. Rachel, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, this emphasis on networking is so important. And so I don't want to repeat what everyone said, but absolutely go to these conferences. There are ways of students to do it very inexpensively, student registrations, and to fly and to do it and to be motivated that way. And just looking back on my own career, doing that since I was a student, whatever the conference was, whether it was a museum related conference, a vet conference, or a later, astrophysics conference or planetary, those connections follow me to this day. And these are my colleagues. And they don't have to, you build this up over a long period of time. So nothing is immediate. And I tell students that start doing it now, and don't worry about fewer women in STEM, because I think it's getting better in that regard, in the balance, but even, it takes a long, long time to change the demographic of institutions, and academia is still male dominated in the STEM fields, but it doesn't mean that isn't changing. And we're all part of this process. And so stay motivated, find good mentors. They are there. There are plenty of them. You just have to, I've had students I just hired for this summer, frankly, who came and found, a lot of them, if they find me. And the two I hired, these two women, I'm excited about this summer because they found me. They're so motivated. They're not even astronomy majors, I'll say, and they're going to be great. And I want to encourage them. And they have great skills that I think I can help them with, and they're going to be a great part of our team. And I just think that stay driven, and that's true for everybody. And they will be part of the next generation of great scientists, or whatever career they end up doing. So just to keep their eye on that ball of, you're part of this institution, they're part of it. They're part of society as a scientist. And so don't forget that takes a long time. And we as humans have a hard time. I know I think about big time scales as an astronomer, but we have a hard time with seeing that long term practically, I think, is that, if it's going to take another 10 years, it goes fast. You'll be surprised how fast 10 years goes by. So that's what I would try to encourage them with.
Rachel, that reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that talks about never give up on a dream because of the time it will take to accomplish it. The time passes anyway.
There you go.
So staying at it. Yeah. And I will make a quick plug for internships, because I will say internship was very foundational in me finding my career path, but we have lots of internships at DEQ. I know that, as you mentioned, the Museum of Natural Sciences and DNCR also have a lot of internships. So for anyone watching this who's a student, please be sure to check those out, because we love getting great students coming in and finding their career path and helping them along that way as well. So Emma, why don't I go to you next?
I was definitely going to talk about internships and just gaining experience. So as one of the folks who took a nonlinear pathway, the more things you try, the more you learn about what you do want to do, but the more you also learn about what you don't want to do. And that can be everything from, am I interested in studying turtles or birds? Or it could be as simple as, how many hours a week do I want to sit at a desk? How many hours a week do I want to be out in the field? How many hours a week do I want to be staring through a microscope, right? Even those kind of job conditions, the more things you try, the more you understand about yourself, your interests, your passions, and then you start kind of putting together those pieces of what that could look like in a career. The other thing, which I think Rachel made a really good point about, is reach out to people. So you're looking for experience, you don't know where to start, you find you know, your local aquarium, you find your local museum, you find a faculty member at a local university who's doing research that just sounds really, really cool, reach out. Because as professionals, it is like the most wondrous feeling when a student or a young person finds us, shows us that they have some innate interest or want to learn from us. And to Rachel's point, even if your background does not perfectly align what maybe on paper we should be looking for in an intern, in a volunteer, in someone to join our team, having that interest and that passion sometimes means a lot more than what's on your resume. So don't hesitate to reach out. It doesn't hurt to try.
Love that. Thank you, Emma. Vicky.
Yes, Emma, I agree totally. And what Dawn and Rachel said, also everybody, and Christine. So I would say, imagine your dream job and then find a way to do it. Volunteer, support yourself by waiting tables or get any job necessary to get a foot in the door. Because I know sometimes economic challenges exist. Take advantage of all opportunities. Even if it isn't exactly what you think you might like, you never know what you will learn from it. And as Emma said, it's really important to learn what you don't like also, and that's okay. We can't all be everything. So for the right professional niche, try different things and don't be afraid to adjust. And I would say just talk to people in the field and keep trying things, get advice. If an opportunity comes available to study abroad, even though it's not in sciences necessarily, do that, because that's so important and it broadens your whole concept and it opens your mind to other ways of doing things. So yeah, I love this panel, by the way, and I wish you had all been there all along my whole career path. So thank you for doing this.
That's great. And I'm just going to double check. Christine, I've already called on you on this one. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, making sure. All right. So, Rachel, one of the things that you brought up was how things have changed in the last 10 years. And so we may kind of go along this theme for a moment and think about, as you're preparing for your field, any challenges that you experienced or other experiences that, whether it's academic or professionally, that you attributed to your gender or other factors. And have you noticed any notable improvements in the last 10 years as you've been in these fields and have seen things change over time? So Rachel, I may start with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, astrophysics, physics, and astronomy, it's pretty male. It dominated in the profession when you get to the professor level or researcher level. But what's interesting, I saw that question, I was thinking about it because in 10 years you also change. And so it's sort of like my perspective changes in that I'm more confident 10 years later. I don't notice it as much. I don't care as much that I'm the only woman there, or maybe the only person, frankly. Like when I'm observing on a mountain, it's literally me and like one other ranger or something, or or 5 people on a mountaintop, that you get more confident about that. I definitely think there are a lot of more women, there are plenty of women in grad school, like you mentioned, and undergraduate. But when you get up, it's I think it's a culture too that people think about, like, oh, if I become a professor, I can't have kids by a certain, or I have to wait till I have tenure. I've heard students talk about this, and I'm not sure. For me, like, I don't have children. I have a lot of animals, non-human animals. And so that is great. But yeah, I mean, balancing all of that, you get better at it. And I think if people worry about work-life balance, I would suggest, this is just my opinion, is don't worry too much about that. Just do what you need to do. But while you're managing your balance, just make sure that you get your work done, that you don't, I've had some students who think, they may not get their deadlines done, but they left to go do something, which is great to go do it. But remember that you work on a team and that you want to balance it and to learn how to do that. And it's hard. And I try to help students with that, to, explain what that means and all of this. But no, you can have a life for sure, and be a professional. And I think over time, I just got better at that, learning how to do that, but always making time for yourself. Even in grad school, I would always, go to yoga every morning or go running or something. I still do that. I still go running at least, and that kind of thing. So I think just throughout your career, don't let that go. Like, keep part of your things that you like to do, your hobbies, your sports, whatever you're doing, keep marching along with that, and then you'll be good with that balance, and you can be a professor and have a life and a family and a farm and whatever you want to have. I think so I just think it's over the 10 years, I haven't noticed a huge change, honestly, in an academic setting, but I don't think about it really, to be honest. I'm sure that it would be maybe different if it was a rebalanced gender thing, but I've just worked with it. It's my field, so I just keep going along with it. And it's not really a negative thing, I think, right now. But others in other fields, I'm really interested to hear what others say about their field, how it's different. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Dawn, I'm curious, you've experienced private sector, teaching, state government now. What changes have you observed over the past decade or so? And have you experienced any challenges that you would associate to being a woman, or and being in this field? How would you describe your experience?
I think over the past 10 years, or if I think about the last 10 years, I would say I feel like there are more women represented in STEM fields, or like in the offices around me, versus when I, let's say, started, or like 10 years or so ago. I feel like there are more women in the field. And as far as challenges due to gender, I think I would sort of echo what Rachel said. It's like, do your thing. You know what I mean? Just go and do your thing, and then and just be good at what you're doing. You know what I mean? Don't slack. Do your stuff, and then and it's good. But I have heard the story, so I know that there are some like inequities that exist. So there are stories where a young lady was told by a professor in college, well, maybe engineering is more geared towards men than women. Maybe you want to find a different thing to do, that kind of thing, which, well, yeah. And then like when we graduated college, you can look and see what industry standards are for salaries. And I know people and their salaries were just much lower than what the industry said for can be graduating at that point, and they attributed it to gender. But yeah, so I would say changes in the right direction, moving in the right direction in the last 10 years or so. But yeah, there are challenges that are out there. But I do like Rachel's thing though. It's like when you're there, you're doing it, just do it.
That's right. Dawn, as you're talking, it reminds me when my daughter was little. My daughter is now 13, but when she was younger, researching toys. And I learned about how a lot of toys that girls have are geared towards storytelling, because that's how girls tend to prefer to play, and boys, it's more just kind of building without stories. So I got to meet the founder of this organization called Goldie Blocks that is geared towards getting girls interested in engineering through storytelling, but also still having the building. And so it's encouraging to see developments like that are helping orient more girls, young girls, to those fields than more thought given to how do you start them early in showing them that that's a possible field. So it made me think of that. That's great. Christine, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I would say one story in particular growing up that I like to share is I was interested in going to a civil engineering camp, and then quickly found out that it was only open to boys. And so that was when I was like 13, 14, 15. So I would like to think that that has changed since since then. I'm sure it has. And but I have been very fortunate to have been surrounded by really powerful, strong women role models in my career, and I feel like there's a lot of women that have forged the path for me. And I would say my field, industry, food recovery, recycling, composting, I think in general it is well represented by female leaders, and especially in the compost industry, recycling industry. For example, my boss, Wendy Worley, it's nice having, a female-led section. Rhonda Sherman, who has just paved the way in vermiculture for not only North Carolina, but the state. Amy Brooks, she runs one of the largest compost facilities in the state. Jen Maxwell at App State. So there's just been some really powerful women that have come before me that I get to learn from. But I do see one gap in compost facility operators. So there are only two that I know of in the state, Amy Brooks and Caitlin that owns Terrabella in Greenville, North Carolina. So I think in general, my field is well represented, but when you get to some of the operating the heavy equipment, that's where we could maybe use some more diversity.
Thank you, Christine. Emma, how about you?
Yeah, I kept thinking about kind of role models, listening to folks speak and in preparation for this. And I think in a lot of ways I was really lucky in that both of my biology teachers in high school were women. And my biology faculty as a department in undergrad was definitely skewed towards women. And so I kind of, as I was entering academia and my professional life, I had all of these absolutely incredible women role models to follow. It has been interesting throughout my career. I think in some of my graduate work, women were more scarce. So it's certainly not necessarily representative of all of academia or all of biology or things like that. But I just keep coming back to the importance of role models. Yeah.
It was so important to see people, who look like you doing what you want to do. That's for sure. Vicki, how about you?
I agree with all the panelists and what they've said. There have been some challenges along the way. When I was a master's student, male scientist took data and published it without my knowledge. It did include me, but I never saw it before. And I think that was just an attitude that I was just a young graduate student and didn't need to be, first author. But in general, the female mentors, as others have said, have been amazing, and in the male mentors too. So I do believe it has improved in the last 10 years. And in the North Carolina Marine Mammal Stranding work, we have just such giving, hardworking men and women and veterinarians that we work with who are just so understanding and would not tolerate any kind of bias. And so I do believe it is getting better. And as Rachel said, if you just keep doing your work and talk to other people for support if you experience some negative behavior, because a lot of people have, to understand it and know that you're not alone. But I would say keep doing your work and your work will speak for itself.
That's great. And Vicki, I may just kind of kick it back off here with you too. As we're talking about the importance of role models here a lot across the panel, and I'm curious if everybody could highlight. I know I think about this often. How we get in our positions is, one of the ways we succeed is by finding those mentors or role models who really give us advice and show us the way. Perhaps give opportunities that we might not have found otherwise, or show us the opportunities we might not have found otherwise. So Vicki, is there anybody who really stands out for you in your career that really helped you along your path?
Yes, thank you. That one professor who hired me when I was painting the outside of a building working for the maintenance at Duke Marine Lab, and he's sadly passed away, Richard Barber. But my husband, who runs the Bonehenge Whale Center, Keith, and our two daughters who live far away but are great role models for me. And then all the North Carolina marine mammal stranding people are just amazing. My PhD advisor at Duke Marine Lab was great. And I think a lot of the people in science are not biased about gender issues. And so that's really good, and just value the work and see that you're dedicated. But I do think it's okay to talk about it too, if you experience it, and discuss it. And as others have said, be kind to yourself and take care of yourself, and go for a run, or do yoga, or meditate, or a walk, or a bike ride, and continue to do that. And then you can find the balance that you need and appreciate our differences and similarities.
That's great. Christine, I'll go to you next. Any role model that stands out for you?
Yeah, definitely in undergrad, just the laboratory assistant that was my boss working in the soil lab. That was just huge, being in that environment. And then again, she pushed me to other internships. So again, just can't stress the importance enough of networking. And then also being like resilient is one piece of advice that I wanted to share. In the workforce, you will experience setbacks and challenging situations, but it's how you bounce back from that and maintain a positive attitude that can really set you apart from others. So I'd say as women, we're incredibly tough, and definitely shows how resilient we are.
That's great. Rachel, how about you? Any role models and advice generally?
Yeah. Well, I feel like this is like the Oscar speech. It's like I forget people and you have to apologize later. So I don't know. But I will say what Christine said about resilience is absolutely true. And how you respond is the main thing. Gosh, so I've given my nonlinear path. There are plenty of people in different fields that actually I feel like were role models, and ones I think they become role models because you gravitate towards them because they are supportive. So all the people who supported me, I mean, who I think about, I have a supportive family. My mom, my grandparents were supportive on both sides. And my dad, who passed away, but my whole family, just gosh, I don't even want to say names because I'll forget people, but but my husband is hardworking people who are smart, who encourage me, who throughout my career, people at a design firm I worked at in Boston, and people at who or my colleagues today. And I was actually telling someone recently about this, about how when it comes to people you really trust and you really work with and you can really, who have your back, there are not that many. I mean, who you absolutely, with everything in your life, you can know that you're kind of safe with these people. I would say like 5 who are my close colleagues and friends and family as well. But in terms of work, about 5 people, and hold on to those people and keep working with them. And they evolve over time, you evolve over time. But again, I think like this idea of a role model, or these people who encourage you, who answer your questions, who make time for you, who are people you admire for whatever reason, or inspire you for whatever reason. So there are lots of them. And then finding it within yourself, like what Christine was saying, like this tenacity, like you are in charge of your own destiny. I hate to say it but your future is yours. And so if you want to do it and your current professor or whoever it is, boss, is not encouraging, you'll find a new one and keep going. And so it's kind of like, I use the term like dredging it up, like you have the strength and the tenacity and the power to do it. So do it, and use those people around you in the best way you can to support you in that goal, is kind of how I look at it. So
Thank you, Rachel. Dawn, we'll go to you next.
Oh, wow. Role models. And so when I think about role models, I think of a person who's doing a job that, well, I guess doing the job that you could do or whatever. So when I went to work in a paper mill, Then when I went to pulp prep or like stock preparation, then the person who was the supervisor or the leader was a female. Her name was Beth. And that was a totally male dominated society. In that, because I mean, it's the guys who are running the machines and the guys who are doing the stock prep in the back. And so it was all guys. And she was the person who was supervising that area. So just to see her doing that role, and then when she left, and that's the supervisor role that I feel like after she left, but that was good. And then, but when you start talking, then it's like, okay, so then familial support is really, that was really important. So my mom, my dad, my siblings, actually seeing my sister graduate college. She graduated in nursing some years ahead of me, but it was the idea. It's like, okay, yeah, you could do this. You know what I mean? It's like, if you are interested in doing engineering, you can do this. If I could do nursing, you could do that. So that was good. My mom always there, just being supportive. She was always in my corner. And then I think so as we were talking, it's like you're going across the whole gamut of the career, whatever. So even now, Taylor Hartsfield in the deputy director position, and the way that she's just always able to put, if you ask her a question or something, then she's looking for it, or she's going to pull the information from somewhere. And it's just like, those are the role models. It's good. So yes, that's it.
Thank you, Dawn. Emma, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely have one person in particular who comes to mind. She was someone that I encountered in undergrad. I took a class with her my first semester as a freshman student. This was little Emma. I was young, I was shy, I did not speak up, but I was attentive and really enjoyed her course because it was ecology based. And she was one of those folks who, even when you're shy and you're in the back and you're not making yourself known, she gave me opportunities I would never have known could have been mine, right? So I took that class with her, and then she asked if I wanted to be a teaching assistant that spring. And so I did. And I TA'd for her off and on all 4 years. I did research with her all 4 years. I took a class where we studied abroad for 3 weeks, and she was one of the lead instructors on that course, right? So having role models who are going to see things about you that maybe you don't recognize yet in yourself because of where you're at in your academic life or your career. And then having those folks too who will push you and who are helping build you both professionally, but also like building your confidence and building your ability to go out and do what you need to do and be the best. And some of these themes that kind of Dawn and Rachel were touching on earlier, right? So I do have one person in particular that I think of when I think of just really stellar role models.
Sounds like she really took you under her wing early. That's wonderful.
Yeah, she did.
Those are important people. So we have just a few minutes left. We're going to do one, I'm going to call it a semi-lightning round, last question here, which is, what advice would you give educators today to help them guide women and underrepresented minorities in STEM fields to careers like you all have? So let's see. Emma, I'll just go back to you and we'll go around. So Emma, you want to start us off on this one?
Definitely. So 2 things that immediately come to mind. Have high expectations of your students. The research has been done. If you have low expectations of your students will meet your expectations low. If you have high expectations of your students will meet your expectations high. So always have high expectations for your students and give them those really integrated, in-depth, interactive learning experience like place-based learning or project-based learning, those things that are going to drive their curiosity, get them asking questions and getting them to take that next step of, well, how do I keep going with this inquiry?
That's great. Christine, how about you?
Yeah, I'd say keep inspiring your students and help introduce them to mentors that can lead to the internships that we were talking about that are so important. And I'd say finally, reach out to the community for guest speakers because we can help reinforce the message that that educators say every day.
Great suggestion. Vicki, how about you?
I would say keep learning from your students and be open to that. Be inclusive, ask them questions. And I would say encourage them to tell you if they have issues at the time and so that they can confide in you and explain what's going on with them so you understand them better, and then offer them opportunities.
That's great. Thank you, Vicki. Dawn, how about you?
So I would say for educators to be the encouraging resource for the students, that you don't tell the students what they cannot do. Like if they're asking you about something and you don't think they have the aptitude or something, that you never tell them what they can't do. You just give them the path that it takes to get to where they're trying to go. The other thing is for like underrepresented groups, then I would say those people may not have people in their circle of influence who they see in STEM roles. So any kind of resources that you as a teacher can provide for them, to point them in a direction. So there are MITE programs or like the home program at NCANT. There are all these programs that are out there to get underrepresented groups or students interested in STEM. So I would say encourage them in those areas.
Thank you, Dawn. And then last but not least, Rachel.
Yeah, I would say, well, everything everyone said, I agree with. And I would also just add, and I say this to my students, is I'm here for their success. I want them to succeed. I want you to do well. I'm not here to give people bad grades, but if you don't do the work, you're not going to get an A, you know, that kind of thing, to use me as a resource, to ask me questions. I will meet with you. I will help you do basic math if you want, whatever you need. Like, this is my time with them. And I explain that to them, that I want them to succeed. And I think that I think more educators need maybe to say that to students. Don't realize that they get graded by educators. They are evaluated all the time. They're afraid of failing. They think they can't do something. But just no matter what we do in the class, you know, I teach undergrads, and all of the coming up through into undergrad is really important. So the K through 12 educators, especially too, to get them into those disciplines is really important. And once they're there in my class, I tell them, I want you to do well. I want everyone to get an A if possible. That would be great. And I explain that to them so that they know that aside from the opportunities I try to create with that, you know, for them, like I just heard, you know, if we have I work at a museum, so we're trying to give them these opportunities in any way I can. I try to do, but also reminding them that I'm not just here to grade them, so they move through, but I really want them to succeed in what they want. So to ask me what they need to do that.
Great. That encouragement is huge. And I like the high expectations. And I'll circle back to that, you know, making sure that we're setting those high expectations is great too. I'll just say, I know we're closing up here. What an honor to be moderating this panel of esteemed women who are just rock stars in the field of STEM. And I'm so grateful to each one of you for taking time today to share your path and your experiences, because that certainly lights the path for others to come behind you. So thank you for what you do every day to contribute to STEM and to ongoing research and science and education, but also thank you for what you're doing too to share your experience so that others can come along as well. So Chris, I think I'll hand it back to you to wrap us up.
Thank you, by the way.
Thank you.
Come on over.
You can stay there, Rachel.
Okay.
I'll just express my thanks to all of you for being a part of the Lunchtime Discovery series today. This was absolutely incredible. Your insights and experiences and knowledge were so fascinating, and everything that you were willing to share was just awesome to hear. So I will encourage all of the viewers, make sure you drop your appreciations for today's guests in the chat on YouTube, just like clapping hands emojis all the way down, because this was absolutely fantastic.
I wish we could all go to lunch. I feel like we need to all go to lunch now. Reach through the TV. Yeah.
And I'm glad that, you know, we were able to make these connections. I think next time we do this, Secretary Biser will have to have you on the panel itself and get your experiences and insights as well.
It was really fun for me to get to learn from everybody here today, but always happy to participate in these.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. Well, Secretary, thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in this program. Thank you to all of the panelists and the guest speakers. And of course, thanks to the Office of Environmental Education staff for their organization and coordination to bring this program together, and all of the Lunchtime Discovery Series programs, and to the digital media staff here at the museum responsible for getting this program out to you in such a great way. Many thanks to everybody who's working together to bring this program to you every Wednesday at noon, which means we'll be back here again next week with another exciting show for you. So go ahead, mark your calendars, sign up for the Lunchtime Discovery Series email newsletter at ee.northcarolina.org, or you can also hit up the museum's website, naturalsciences.org, where you can see upcoming programs as well. Don't miss out. Thank you for joining us and celebrating this edition for Women's History Month. We'll be back here next week. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Be well. Bye,
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.